red light quits. Well, the red light's through flashing now. So I've got a couple of announcements that I need to make for anyone who's watching online. There'll be no Bible study next week for Knox County schools, Knox County, Tennessee, no schools, and so I have to babysit next week. And then for anyone local, on March the 16th and 17th, the Carter High School Alumni Choir will have a hymn sing at Ebenezer Baptist Church. And if you want more information on that, you can message me. And for our lessons, I need to announce this, that because we started late in the year, we're having to combine some of the lessons. So for at the week after spring break, which will be March 16th for the Monday night group and March 17th for the Tuesday morning and Tuesday night group, we will combine chapters 39 and 40. If you download the lessons or if you have a set of lessons, we'll have to do those two lessons together. So I'll have to try to work that out. So you look puzzled, is it?
No, they're already combined on our paper.
39 and 40 are? Mm-hmm. Well, alrighty then.
It is.
Well, good, and I won't have so much work. Well, I was going through and seeing what I was going to have to combine. Well, that's good to know. Thank you very much. You can tell I hadn't looked ahead at the lessons. So
Clarify the date of the choir.
that's the 15th. What did I say?
15th and 16th.
Well, I was looking at this here for
Okay, so it's just the 15th.
just the 15th, Sunday night at Ebenezer. I didn't have that announcement down here, so when I started in on that one, I'm like, wait a minute, I don't have that down here. So I'm a little befuddled tonight, so I didn't sleep much last night, so. You're going to have to keep me straight. You can see that, or I'm already off. We hadn't started yet. So, all right, well, chapter 38. Let me make sure I'm on the right chapter. Chapter 38. Yeah, it's the right chapter. Chapter 38 of Genesis is another, we were talking when the ladies came in, it's another one of those chapters that I will try to keep PG rated. I'll do my best. In fact, if you're like me, you may have even asked, why is this even in here? I mean, we jumped from Joseph to this, and it's just like, I don't think I wanted to know this. But, as I was studying, I found two of the commentaries that I use skip this chapter completely. They went straight from 37 to 39. They just skipped it completely. And Warren Wiersbe, who normally has several pages of commentary, had one single page on this. I think they were afraid of it, actually. But I've actually, as I've studied this past week, I began to see why we need to know the things that are in this chapter. This is a very important chapter. First of all, we are in the Toledot, the section of Jacob. Whatever happened to Jacob's descendants? Well, this is one of Jacob's descendants. Judah is one of Jacob's descendants, and this is something that happened to him. And we're talking about Judah, the line of the Messiah. So this is whatever happens to him is doubly important to him because we need to know how that line developed, how it went from person to person. But I think there's more to it than that too. As you can tell, as you read the chapter, this chapter covers a very long period of time. Enough time for Judah to get married, have 3 sons, have them grow to marrying age, then for Tamar to have 2 sons of her own. And although the commentaries disagree, some commentaries disagree and say that Judah actually married the daughter of Shua and Tamar. This whole situation actually took place when they first came into Canaan. That all of this time on this. The best explanation that I found, the best commentaries, most of the commentaries that I use, set the time span for chapter 38 to around 22 to 23 years. That's the time span. From verse 1 all the way through to verse 30 is about 22 to 23 years long. And that fits. There's plenty of time This will go all the way up to the second year of the famine, when all of Jacob's family go down to Egypt. So what we have to remember is, as the Israelites are moving and going to Egypt, Tamar's got 2 infant sons. So that's the time frame, from the time that Joseph goes into slavery until the time that they go to Egypt. All of this in chapter 38 is taking place simultaneously with all the things we'll be covering in the next several chapters. It's like you're watching a split screen. It's all, March Madness is almost upon us. And there'll be the split screens, of the different basketball games that's going on at the same time. So it's like watching 2 split screens. That you have all of this that's going on, and all of this information, 23 years worth of Judah's life on one screen, and then you have all these details that's happening to Joseph on the other screen. So, and also, all the other sons of Jacob were probably marrying and having families as well along about this time. It's just that we are focusing on Judah. If you happen to go to Numbers chapter 26, I'm not going to turn there, but if you go to Numbers 26, there is a census of the Israelites, and we see that they all had descendants. I mean, of course, we know that when the tabernacle is built, all the descendants, the 12 tribes, are camped out on the 4 sides. So we know all of them at some point married and have children. We just don't have the details. This is the only one of the 12 that we have the details on, except for Joseph, of course. As I first began studying this lesson, and as I wrote your lessons, and I was thinking about this chapter, I felt at first that this chapter simply gave us the weakness or the downfall of Judah. In fact, I've kind of mentioned that in the last couple of lessons. When we're talking about Simeon and talking about Levi and talking about Reuben and what they did, and then those 4 brothers and what they did, and I said, and we'll see what Judah did in his morality next time. That was my mindset going into this. Like I said, Reuben and what he did, Simeon and Levi and what they did, and the 4 sons of the slave wives did something horrible. We don't know what it was, and we'll talk more about that in a moment, but now I felt like, okay, we know all about that, so now we'll see how Judah fell. In fact, the first commentary, I mentioned this before, the first commentary that I usually read is Henry Morris's commentary, and Henry Morris said, Judah seemed to have some sense of moral and spiritual responsibility. And I made a note that said, really? Did we read the same chapter here? I mean, I was like, no. So, fortunately, as Joe would say, I forged ahead and kept reading. But after studying this week, I'm beginning to look at it a little differently. I've done this about every character. I've gone into it with a preconceived idea of what this character did and what they were like. But after studying them, I've gotten to know them. So I've kind of gotten to know Judah a little bit. I think that we saw Judah make a bad decision in chapter 37 by suggesting that the brothers sell Joseph. That was his suggestion. Reuben was going to go back and get him, and the other brothers just wanted to kill him, and Judah goes, he sees that dollar signs. He says, no, let's sell him. So he made this bad decision by suggesting that they sell Joseph, but then when they get back to his father, and they bring that bloody jacket, and he saw the consequences of what he'd done, and he saw his father's grief, I think he couldn't take it, because he is more responsible than they were. Actually, he put into motion what needed to be, but the consequences of his action, and so he couldn't take it. So what he does in this chapter may be initially wrong, but later, and I want you to watch for this in the coming chapters, I think we will see why God chose Judah to be the one through whom the Messiah would come. The Messianic line, the seed of the woman. Judah would be the one through whom that would continue. But we also have to remember that you and I, we know the story, we know that Judah's is the line from which the Messiah will come. But did Judah know that? I don't think he did. Abraham was given the covenantal blessing. Isaac was given the blessing. Jacob was given the blessing. But we have no record of Judah having been given the blessing. I think all of them expected Joseph to be the one. I mean, after all, he got that priestly coat, and he was around there. His father basically gave him as we said last time, the power of attorney. They all expected it to be Joseph. But now Joseph's gone. And I don't think any of them knew through whom the line would continue until we get to chapter 49, when Jacob blesses his sons. And that's when they know that Judah will be the one. But remember too, at this point, all of them have only been living in Canaan about 10 or 12 years. They've not been there very long. They've only been in Hebron a couple of years. And by the way, I'm just sidebar here. Saturday, I was reading some news, and I saw this news clip about the war in Iran. I saw this little video clip about missile impacts in Hebron. And I thought, in Hebron, people have been living there 4,000 years. They were living, that's what we're studying in Hebron, and they're still living there. That just hit me that the very place that we're talking about is still thriving today. But a little kind of sidebar there. But at this point, they haven't been there very long. They've just been in Hebron a couple of years where Isaac is living.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Isn't Judah the oldest?
No, Reuben's the oldest. There's Reuben and Simeon and Levi. Judah's number 4.
Okay.
Fourth in line.
There would be no reason to expect that he would be.
Well, except the other 3 had disqualified themselves. And if you're moving up in rank, but other than that, I mean, they all just expected it to be Joseph. It's the father's favorite. He was technically a firstborn of Rachel. And, and his father loved him more than any of the rest of them. So I think they all just expected that. but again, at this point, they're still a very small family. Later, in these next 23 years or so, 22, 23 years, when they go into Egypt, at that point, there's only 70 of them. So if there's only 70 of them 22 years from now, how few are they now? I mean, there's only a handful of them now. And where are they going to get wives anyway? They can't go back to Haran like Isaac's servant and Jacob did. I mean, Laban and Jacob made sure of that, made that clear. Let me just read this quickly, chapter 31, verse 52. You remember whenever Jacob left, and then Laban tracked him down and found him, and they had this covenant, which was a covenant that says, you don't cross this line. So verse 52 of chapter 31 said, this heap, meaning that they'd made this pillar of stones, this heap is a witness, and the pillar is a witness. Let's see, Laban is speaking. I will not pass by this heap to you for harm, and you will not pass by this heap and this pillar to me for harm. This is our line in the sand, and neither one of us is crossing this. So the sons couldn't go back to Haran and get wives. Where else are they going to get wives? Canaanite women are... Okay, I thought you were about to say something. I was giving you a break there.
It's like, well, it said, I won't cross this for harm. So I can cross it for other things, so you would think.
You would think, but the way that it's written in the rest of that chapter, it's like, no, we never
I
hear.
understand what
Yeah,
you're saying.
yeah.
I do. I understand. It's just that to me, logically.
Logically, you would think I can go back for other reasons, but for harm. But how are you going to know if it's for harm or
A bunch of
not?
money.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Go back.
Go back. I've got plenty of money now, but yeah, I mean, you can come for that. But where else are they going to get wives? Nothing. Nobody is there. No, it's all that's left is Canaanite women. 10 sons need wives. No matter how much they may have believed in the covenant, they were in grave danger of being swallowed up by the Canaanite culture. The Canaanites were very immoral people, but they were so likable. I mean, isn't that the way it usually is? They're just so likable. I heard a man one time complaining about doing business with somebody that had a fish symbol on his business card. He said, don't ever do business with people who advertise that they're Christians. They'll rip you off. And what he said was, just give me a good old honest heathen to do business with. Oh, you want somebody honest, but they were just so likable. But the Canaanites were always ready to establish closer contacts with the descendants of Abraham. We saw that at Shechem. They had ulterior motives, of course, but who else are Jacob's sons going to marry? But this posed a great danger of the sons of Jacob forgetting the covenant by intermarrying, by blending into daily life. We've talked about that many times. You just get into a routine, and as my sons say, one day just blends into the next. You get up the next morning and do it all over again. So, and if Joseph had not gone to Egypt, they may have even starved to death when the famine came.
Yeah.
Because there were so few of them. And so, since Judah is the one through whom the Messiah will come, I think that's why we have his specific history, how his descendants began. And none of the commentaries mention this, but I think it is quite possible that a similar story of married life with its ups and downs was being played out with the other 9 brothers at the same time. Benjamin is very young at that time, but we have the details of Judah's life. But this is another reason I think that we can depend on the Bible as being true. And that is, it doesn't give every historical detail, but the details it does give are accurate and true. It gives the true story of the children of Israel, warts and all. And we've asked so many times, have they ever done it completely right? Have they ever followed their covenant Lord completely right? And no, they haven't. And the Bible doesn't set them up on a pedestal and praise them without error. But it tells us how they were. As we've often said, they were just flawed human beings that God used. God forgave them and used them. And I take that as a great encouragement for the rest of us. So any comments or questions on that before we jump into the scripture?
I wonder how, like with other things, hadn't thought about it before, but, with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, although with different amounts of it, the blessing kept being said. Yeah. Right? And appearances and the voice of the Lord and altars and worship and sins, but then return, And then it's almost like the brothers, like you said, they expected it was Joseph, but there was no talk of that. No. Like I wondered, did they even believe the covenant? Did they even think about it?
Yeah, right. Did it ever even cross their mind with their day-to-day lives?
And how much does that go back to Jacob, right?
Yep.
That he didn't really teach them.
Yeah. We have no record of God speaking. He will speak to Jacob one more time, but we have no record of God speaking to Joseph or to Judah or any of the others after Jacob is kind of waning off the scene just a little bit. And you're right, there's no record here of any of them building an altar, no record of any of them sacrificing or worshiping. And that's why why I've often believed that up until this time, up until Jacob, all the way back to Adam and Eve and through Noah and all the way down, I think they knew how to worship. I think they knew what burnt offering, well, they did burnt offerings, but I think they knew what God expected. I think they knew everything about how to worship. And the reason God had to give the law to Moses was because of what we've just said. It's waning here, and after being in Egypt for 400 years, they'd forgotten how to worship. And so God has to teach them again how to worship.
That clears up some questions that I've had about that.
Good. I mean, there's nowhere that it says that, but
that didn't mean
the fact
that they didn't.
the fact that they worshipped, the fact that they kept building altars, like we've said, if you build an altar and you don't sacrifice on it, you've done nothing but build a grill. So you just build a place to burn stuff if you don't sacrifice on it. So that's the whole point. We have to deduce that from their actions.
Yeah.
So, anything else? All right, so chapter 38. At the end of chapter 37, as I said, our history goes two different directions. Joseph goes down to Egypt, and for the next 22 years is completely separated from his family. He doesn't know if they're alive or dead. He doesn't know anything about them. His life is just there. And they don't know anything about him either. Joseph's 22 years are given in much detail in chapters 39 through 45. We got one chapter here of Judah's history, and then we've got all these chapters with the detail of Joseph's history. And then in chapter 46, in chapter 45, he finally sees the brothers again when they come down for grain. And in chapter 46, he's reunited with his father. So we've got the two histories going two different directions. Judah's 22 years, as I said, is given to us in one chapter. And we're given the bare minimum of details. But it begins this way. And it came about at that time. At what time? Right after Joseph was sold. And the brothers, Judah and the 9 others, not counting Benjamin, conspired to deceive Jacob into believing that some wild animal had killed Joseph. And as we said, it appears that Judah couldn't take Jacob's, all these J's. Judah couldn't take Jacob's grieving, and so he left. It came about at that time that Judah departed from his brothers and visited a certain Adulamite whose name was Hirah. So the New American Standard says that he departed from his brothers. But some of your translations say that Judah left his brothers and went down. Well, some of the commentaries make a big deal about that because it's a play on words, and he went down morally, and he became more immoral, and that may be true, but it's actual. He went down in elevation. Hebron is up here close to the mountain range, and he went down in elevation.
South. Did he go south?
No, he went kind of northwest. I'll tell you.
I didn't see it.
I'll show you just a second. Now, Hebron, like I said, is higher in elevation. Now, we don't know if Judah was planning on moving, or whether he just had to get away for a while. It just says he departed from his brothers, and he went down.
Do you think him and his brothers had a disagreement?
They may have, or I don't. We're not told what made him leave. But if you look at what's going on, and it says he departed from his brothers and he visited this Adulamite. It sounds like he just had to get away. Guilt, exactly. He couldn't deal with it, knowing the part that he had played in that. But he visited whether he was planning on moving or he just had to get away, he visited his friend Hirah. Now, Adullam is not on this map because this map is primarily about Joseph. But Adullam is about 8 miles northwest of Hebron. You see, you find where Hebron is?
Yeah. Yeah.
In the purple line. Well, if you go northwest, about where, between where that first end of Canaan, just to the bottom of that first end of the word Canaan is where Adullam is. Adullam. So that area is what we would call the foothills. It's not quite coastal land. It's flat out there on the coast where Gaza is, or which is Gaza becomes. No, it's Joppa up there north of that is Tel Aviv today. But anyway, it's not down on the flatlands. There are some hills there. You know that because, as I put in your lesson, the cave at Adullam is one of the places where David hid out from Saul. So, that's the place. That's where they are. So, verse 2, and Judah saw that there was a daughter of a certain Canaanite whose name was Shula. This is the father's name. That's not the daughter's name. The way mine reads, it's a little bit confusing. But my translation says he took her and went into her. But while he was visiting, Judah was visiting his friend Har, and he just happened to see the daughter of a man whose name means opulence or wealth.
Rich man's daughter.
A rich man's daughter. Just happened to see a rich man's daughter. We already know how Judah is about money. So he finds a rich man's daughter. So they marry, and she conceives. And then verses 3 and 4. So she conceived and bore a son and named him Er. And then she conceived again and bore a son and named him Onan. So let's just stop right there. And in true patriarch fashion, Judah names the first son. She conceived and bore a son, and he, Judah, named him Er. Then she conceived again and bore a son and named him, indicating she named him Onan. So then, in perhaps giving in to the Canaanite ways, Shula's daughter names the next two sons. So Judah is already giving in. He's already compromising. He's already going along. Well, this is how we did it, and I really want to name him that. Yeah. So she names.
Henpecked.
Yeah, already henpecked. They're right. So at this time, Judah is at least in his early 40s, and so he's just now getting married, and so he wanted to make sure that his son married at a very young age. Possibly the heir is probably just in his teens. Maybe mid to late teens. Verse 5, she bore still another son and named him Shilei, and it was at Chizib, but she bore, I don't know where that is. I couldn't find that in any of my maps. But anyway, verse 6, now Judah took a wife for Er, his firstborn, and her name was Tamar. So why Tamar? Why did he pick her? We don't know. Well, there's no scripture. There's nothing to indicate why he chose her. But actually, if you think about it, Judah didn't choose her. God chose her. As we see in Matthew chapter 1, verse 3. When you think about it, Jesus is the only one that got to choose his ancestors. None of us got any say in the matter. Jesus got to choose his ancestors. But then verse 7 is interesting. But Er, maybe because of his name, Er. But Er, Er is shortcut for error. So, but Er, Judah's firstborn, was evil in the sight of the Lord, so the Lord took his life. Now, the NIV and the King James Version say that he was wicked. But here's what the interesting part is. This word wicked or evil is the same word that we saw back in chapter 37, verse 2, when Joseph brought back a bad as the New American Standard put it, a bad report. We talked about that word in that lesson, that the word bad actually meant evil or wicked, but it's the same word here. These 4 sons of the slave wives, whatever they were doing was as wicked as this is. One of the commentaries defined the word as a type of wickedness that deserves divine punishment. So now think about this. Here's the thing. Why, if Er was evil enough for God to take his life, why did the 4 brothers get to live?
Because they were Israelites.
Exactly. It took me a few minutes to figure that one out. Now wait a minute. If they were doing something that was equally as bad, but yeah, they were 4 of the 12. So they got to live. What do you think they were doing? Well, I mean, was it in their actions? Was it in their attitude? Was it their lifestyles, or maybe a little bit of all three?
Well, we know it was their attitude, because their attitude prompted whatever evil they did.
Whatever actions they did, yeah.
With their attitude.
But he had to be so young that it's hard to think that, teenagers are rebels today and they grow out
Yeah.
of it.
Unless God knew in his heart it was evil.
Yeah, I meant to look that scripture up. I had it in my notes and I forgot to do that today. In Jeremiah, the heart is desperately wicked.
And who can know it?
Who can know it? Yeah.
I can't get over the fact that he named him all these long Bible names. They're hard to pronounce. He named him
Yeah.
E-R.
E.R.
I mean, what does that mean?
I looked it up, but it was nothing significant.
My thing
Watcher. Yeah,
Oh, is it
watchful.
Watcher?
Yeah, watcher, watchful. Yeah, that's right.
Oh, well, that's good to know.
But
I wondered, I didn't look it up.
I didn't see how that played a role in it.
Yeah.
And another commentary said that it was sexual perversity, which is in keeping with the Canaanite culture, and all the rest of the people that were around them.
But there's really no way to know.
There's really no way to know except that it was bad enough that God took his life.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then verse 7. Look at verse 7 again, the second part of it. The Lord took his life. So did God strike him? I mean, and obviously it doesn't say, so we don't know, but think about this. Did God strike him down, or did God allow him to die? Was it supernatural or incidental?
He'd be dead either way.
He'd be dead either way, exactly. And as we know from 1 Corinthians 11:30 that there are times that God, well, you can see from the rest of Scripture, there are times that God does it. Take Ananias and Sapphira, and all they did was lie about their offering. So yeah, it was bad enough, yeah. So now then, once he dies, we are introduced to what's called a levirate. I'm not sure if you pronounce that levirate or levirate, but I'm going to call it levirate. Levirate marriage. At that time, a levirate marriage was well known, and actually it was in the Code of Hammurabi. It was the law of the land. It's what everybody did. Now, I had always thought that it just came up in Deuteronomy when Moses shares this. Moses does this. But no, this had been going on for ages, and it was well known, like I said, the law of the land. The word levirate actually or literally means next brother or husband's brother. But the brother had to be unmarried. I remember, this was in the early 80s. I'd gone to annual conference one year, and there were some speakers there that were missionaries. They were actually from Africa, and so they were attending a conference here. And at mealtime, I happened to be sitting at the table with one of them, and he actually they practiced that where he lived. He had
Oh,
actually
okay.
had to marry his brother died, and he had to marry his sister-in-law for that. So it still goes on today. But the firstborn from the union of the levirate marriage would carry on the line of the deceased brother. We know that from Deuteronomy. But all other children that they had would belong to this second husband. So verses 8 and 9. Then Judah said to Anan, go into your brother's wife and perform your duty as a brother-in-law to her and raise up offering for your brother. And Onan knew the offspring would not be his, so it came about that when he went into his brother's wife, he wasted his seed on the ground in order to not give offspring to his brother. So notice there in verse 9, it said when he went in, when he had sexual relations with her, which tells us it was more than once. He didn't just do it once. It was often, and it seems that he was more than willing to take her for sexual gratification, but not to father a child. At least not his brother's child. Now, if there could have been some loophole, where the child would be his, I think he would have been all for it, because I'm not told that, but that seems to be the attitude here. He was not this is the key here, he was not willing to fulfill his obligation to his brother. Why do you think that was? Hatred, yeah. Some reason he hated his brother.
Even though that was the tradition.
Yeah.
And you put it into our lives today, it seems it's admirable that he doesn't want to do that.
It seems admirable that he doesn't want to have children, but not to go ahead and have relations with her.
Right, that he doesn't want to have a child that's going to be his brother's, so I really had a hard time with that, with the God of today and the God of yesterday, that it was okay then for him to have relations.
Well, he married her. He would have to marry her.
But the first one wouldn't be his.
Yeah, but the firstborn wouldn't be his, yeah.
But that's not a moral thing, right? I mean, that's a tradition.
Yeah, that's a tradition thing. It's not a moral thing. That's right. That it's just who is the child carrying on the name of? It just, like you said, it becomes a tradition thing rather than whether it's right or wrong. Because if he's married to her, then it's fine for them to have relations.
So he did get married to her?
He did get married to her.
Could it be a greedy thing? The heir would inherit all
Right.
of his father's possessions, whereas the brother would not.
Mm-hmm. And remember, the firstborn got double amount.
I think it's more a greedy thing than...
Well, it could have been jealousy. He didn't want anything of his brothers to continue. Well, it could be selfishness or greed. He didn't want his father's inheritance to be divided, 2/3 of it to go, well, let's see, there was 4 of them, or 3 children. So, the older, this other son would get a huge amount, and then he would get this much, and the other son would get this much. So, yeah, selfishness or greed. Maybe it was pride. He wanted his line to be the firstborn.
And it could be all those things.
Yeah, a little bit of all of it.
There, many times we have more than one.
Oh, yeah.
Motivation for things.
Right, exactly.
And also, he had done something that was apparently extremely wicked. I mean,
Well, what he did was preventing her from having a child. Was what was wicked about it.
But his
Oh, the other brother. Yeah.
I mean, why would he want to give such an evil?
That could be it. And I hadn't thought about it that way. It could be that he didn't want anything of his wicked brothers to go forth. He may have thought he was doing a noble thing, but that's not what he should have done. So that I'm going to make a note of that. So I'll share that tomorrow.
I
So-
just think the whole thing stinks about women having to, my feminist head is rearing here, it just drives
your
me
feminist hat
crazy.
on.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
does. That, well, just because the son dies now, you gotta stay there and marry the next guy.
And suppose you don't like it.
Well-
I don't like him,
May not.
Why do I have to be taken care of by this family?
Yeah.
Wasn't it more of like an obligation?
Yeah.
Of, like, you feel like they were using her or whatever.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
just think that
Perpetuating whatever, but I think in this culture, it was like, this was our son's wife, we're responsible for her, and we need to be
Yeah,
able
yeah.
to see that she has children.
But the right of the woman, if she had said, I mean, they didn't have any rights back then. I
No, it
mean,
doesn't
she
sound like
was
she could
on
have
the
said.
hook
Yeah.
then, as whether she wanted to be married to.
And why in the world, how in the world did women get to that point?
Started out there. Well, I'll tell you how it started out. It was that apple.
Oh, I know. I know, but it's just, why did all of a sudden women become
Subservient.
Yeah.
subservient?
Yeah.
Subservient.
But I think we'll see. I think we'll see
I
something.
think a lot of it is the taking care of.
Yeah, yeah. It's the taking care of her, and I think we'll see something else in her
I mean,
as we go
they're
along.
not the way they're acting, but in
Yeah.
terms of the.
Like with Naomi and Ruth, because like Naomi tried to release her,
Yeah.
Yeah.
her daughters-in-law to
Mhm.
stay wherever it was, and because that was like, but technically they would have went with her.
Yeah.
I mean, Ruth
She
did, but
released him.
she like tried to release them from
Yeah.
their, because she was like, "How will I give you son?"
I can't give you sons in my
Yeah.
old age. Yeah, yeah,
So,
exactly. Yeah, that's a
I think
good.
some of it
That's a
is-
good point.
Yeah.
I just think it should have been the right of the woman to decide then to carry on with the family.
Well, we can't go down that road because that ain't the way it was. So,
And that's something, I mean,
all right. Well, I mean, let's go on. But whatever it was, whatever his reasons were, God was having none of that. So verse 10. But what Onan did was displeasing in the sight of the Lord, so God took his life also. Now, the King James Version doesn't say that what he did was evil. Let's see. In the New American Standard, it just says it was displeasing. However, it is the same root word as the evil, the word that we've seen before. It's not the exact same word, but it's something that is similar to that. And the Lord took his life as well. So now you got to think Judah's getting nervous. He only had one more son, who was a lot young. And here was talking about what the names meant. Either this son was a lot younger, or he was sickly, because his name actually means weak. So Judah didn't want to take a chance on losing his last son, should that son turn out to be just as wicked as his older brothers. But notice, though, none of this was Tamar's fault. The sons' deaths were not her fault. It was their own sinfulness. But Judah, like many parents, didn't see it that way. But notice this. Tamar trusted Judah. Look at verse 11. Judah said to his daughter-in-law Tamar, "Remain a widow, but go back and live in your father's house until my son Shelah grows up." For he thought, "I am afraid that he too may die like his brothers." So Tamar went and lived in her father's house. But she was trusting him to do the right thing, to follow the law, and she would wait. She would be faithful and she would wait. Judah essentially said, "Hang in there and wait for Shelah to grow up." Notice he didn't say, "Wait for Shelah to marry you." He just said, "Wait for him to grow up." It's kind of like, I didn't technically lie, so maybe he was hoping she would find someone else before then.
Was she obligated to that family?
I don't know. I couldn't find anything on that. I think if she had wanted to marry someone else, she could have.
I don't think she could have.
I don't think so
I
either.
think she was a piece of real estate.
Yes.
Well, could be.
Well, she had to keep wearing that veil.
She
That's
she
why
wore.
they brought her to Judah, later on, and we're going to read, like, look what your daughter-in-law, like, I think she still was, like you said.
It could very well,
Well,
be.
you
Yep.
know, her father didn't want her back because that was another mouth. to
Another
feed.
mouth to feed, exactly.
And he probably treated her worse than anybody else in the household because he didn't want her back. You know, he traded her for probably a good sum of money.
Yeah, may have.
He didn't want her back, so.
But here's what I think. And you all may be exactly right. She may have been obligated. But I think Tamar, for whatever reason, wanted to be a part of Judah's family. So, you know, whether she did or not, whether she waited or whether she was obligated, we don't really know. But at any rate, she is waiting. And I'll tell you in a little while why I think she wanted to be a part of the family. So, okay, verse 12. So after a considerable time, so we don't know how long, but after a good amount of time, Shua's daughter, the wife of Judah, died. And when the time of mourning was ended, Judah went up to the sheep shearers at Timnah, he and his friend Hirah, the Adullamite. So sheep shearing time, if you know anything about Old Testament scripture, you know sheep shearing time is party time. And we see that from 1 Samuel 25, 2 Samuel 13. We saw it with Laban. It's a festive time. It's a time of, you shear the sheep, you sell it, you make all your money, and there's plenty of food, there's plenty of drink. And so it's just a festive time. But now, we can see that Judah, we're getting close to that 20 years has passed about by now. So he's probably near 60. He's broken off somewhat from his family by now because it tells us these are his sheep. They're not Jacob's sheep. They're not the brother's sheep. Remember, they were all tending Jacob's sheep before. These are Judah's sheep. He has separated himself somewhat from the family. And Tamar heard about the sheep shearing, verse 13. And it was told to Tamar, behold, your father-in-law is going up to Timnah to shear his sheep. So she knew what would be happening there. But look at what she did. She did 4 things. Verse 14. So first of all, she removed the widow's garments that she'd been wearing all this time. 2, she covered herself completely with a veil, a thick, heavy veil. 3, she wrapped herself, and that was in a different type of garment. And number 4, she sat in the gateway of Enam. I couldn't find that on any of the maps either, so I'm not sure where that was. Which it just says it's on the road to Timnah. For she saw, it's finally dawning on her. Shelah had grown up, and he'd not been given to her. She'd not been given to him as a wife. The light bulb went off. And she said, I'm going to have to take matters into my own hands. So, it was a bold plan. But what were the chances of it working? I'm going to think about this for a minute. First of all, what were the chances that Judah would even see her? Was there only one door into where they were going and that's where she sat? Or were there many ways in? We don't know. What were the chances that he would see her? Second, what are the chances that Judah would even want to have sex with her? And third, what are the chances that she will conceive? It's been 15 plus years since Onan died and she's not getting any younger. So,
The Lord's hand was in that.
as they say, there was a chance. So, and we may think, we read over this and we think that what she did was awful. And prostitution and incest and adultery are condemned by Scripture. But we've got to remember Tamar was a pagan. She was a Canaanite. In the Canaanite culture, promiscuity was nothing unusual. It was a way of life. And we can't expect her to be any different. But I found this interesting, though, this one little side note here. The Canaanite culture condemned adultery, but they permitted prostitution. And I thought, I bet they taxed it too. So, but just as a side note, one of the things,
You can't really have one without the you tend to not have one without the other. I mean, you could have a single man using a prostitute, yes, but
No, it was okay for a married man to have
so what's
to.
the difference with adultery?
Well, it's just
For women,
if
women can't have it.
no, a man could not have another woman that was these temple prostitutes. That was okay because that was worship. That was not just ordinary everyday. So, but that's why adultery was condemned. It was against the law, but prostitution was okay.
It wasn't.
It
taxed,
doesn't
I
make
guess.
sense to us.
What was allowed probably was taxed.
Yeah, I'm sure
What
it was
allowed
taxed.
Yeah.
But here's just something I just want you to know. You may know this, but I have always found this fascinating. One of the things that set the Christ followers apart in the first century church was their morality. That was one thing that set them completely apart from everybody else was their morality. So, and we, like I said, the Bible is accurate and it's historical and it just tells it the way that it was. But what we have to note is that what Tamar did was not for lust and it was not for money, but it was to have a child. She wanted a child, and not just any child. She wanted a child to carry on Judah's line. That tells me she wanted this child.
I wonder why she didn't try to trick the other son.
Well, I don't know. Maybe he was sickly. Maybe he didn't. She just found out about this. Oh, I'll tell you in just a second why.
Okay.
I told you I'm a little muddled tonight, so
Well, I don't know if she
remember my
wanted
notes.
Judah's child. She knew she had to have a child by Judah or she'd be accused of adultery.
Well, it sounds to me like she was pretty desperate. And
She
just
was
trying to look
desperate.
at her options, and Judah was the most, the best of the options that she felt like she had.
Right.
Well, didn't they too count on their children growing up and caring for them when they got older?
Yeah.
If you didn't have a child, how in the world were you going
Yeah.
to?
Her father was eventually going to die. Yeah.
how was she
I mean
going
that
to
could
survive?
be. That very well could be. But I think it was. And you're right. She was.
Ticking.
I said her biological.
Yeah. She's not getting any younger. That's exactly right. And she was desperate.
Should she not have married somebody else?
I don't know. I didn't dig enough to do the research to see the culture.
You don't know if you're stuck with that family or not.
Yeah.
And
But all she knew at this point was that Shelah had grown up and there had been no word from Judah. So think about it. This is what she's done. This is what she's decided to do. What are the chances that he's going to stop? What would make Judah stop for her? Did she put on a fragrance that would grab his attention? Was she wearing a favorite color? Was she perhaps a tune that she was humming? What would she do? What would she do if another man stopped? There's always that possibility. Before Judah got there, what would she do? But think about this. She had completely disguised herself. Judah had no clue it was Tamar. Where have we heard that before?
Leah.
Leah.
Yeah.
Leah was so disguised that Jacob did not have a clue.
And there's a lot of wine involved there.
Well, not yet. Well, at the wedding there was but not here. But here's something. Here, Sherry, this is the thing. There's another thing that we need to know about Tamar's plan. In the levirate marriage, if no brother-in-law existed to fulfill the levirate marriage, then the father-in-law was responsible. I didn't know that until I found this. I was like, okay, now it makes sense.
She tricked him into doing what he was supposed to do.
Yes, exactly.
Even if he was still married, or did the father?
His wife's dead now.
Yeah, but I mean, in the law.
That's why she had. Apparently, it's only if they're available, if the wife is dead or something.
Okay.
Because for the brother-in-law, it would only be a brother-in-law that was not already married.
Okay.
So it had to have been that the father-in-law was the wife was dead or whatever.
Okay.
But that I thought, okay, that makes a lot of sense. But think about it. Why would Tamar even go to this trouble? Now, it is quite possible that it was just simply for a fact to have a child to take care of her. It could have been all those reasons. But I just tend to think it was obvious that Judah didn't want her to be part of the family anymore. So why didn't she just say, "Phooey on you," and go off and find another husband? As we've discussed, we don't know if that was a possibility or not. But here's what I think, and I'll tell you the reason why. Could it be that Tamar actually wanted to be part of the Abrahamic covenant? Remember Rahab? Remember what all Rahab went through in order to be a part of the Abrahamic covenant? I think Tamar knew she lived in the land of Abraham. They'd been well known all these years, just like Rahab when they had the Canaanites had heard all these stories about the Israelites, all the things about the Israelites' God and what he could do. She wanted to be part of that. I think Tamar knew about the Abrahamic covenant. She knew about these brothers, and she knew about this family, and she wanted to be part of the Abrahamic covenant.
She had more respect for Judah than he had for his
she had more respect for their family, for the history, for the heritage, than he had for the family. But we can have differences of opinion on that. But I think because of what Rahab did, that's what helps me with this. But whatever the reason was, the plan worked. Something about her attracted Judah. So verses 15 through 17. When Judah saw her, he thought she was a harlot, for she had covered her face. So he turned aside to her by the road. He said, Here now, let me come into you, for he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. And she said, What will you give me, that you may come into me? And then I can't help this. I've got to say, I'll give you a goat. That just hits me as funny every time I read it. I'll give you a goat.
Wow.
She got his goat. That may be where that saying comes from, actually. It could be. But actually, apparently, if you go to Judges 15 verse 1, Samson does the same thing. So apparently a goat was the going price.
A young goat,
a young goat. Has to be a young goat. But here's why that's important. Here's why the goat is an important thing. For a temple prostitute, they would take that back and offer it as sacrifice. That's why they wanted it. They wanted a goat. They wanted a kid to take it back to offer for a sacrifice. Well, Judah didn't happen to have a goat with him. He hadn't intended on spending money today. So what could he give as a pledge? And again, I couldn't, maybe it's because I'm sleep deprived, but I couldn't help but think about, Wimpy on the old Popeye cartoons, and I will gladly pay you Tuesday. But anyway, Tamar asked for three things, verses 17b through 19. And so she said, well, what kind of a pledge will you send until I can get this goat? And he said, well, what do you want? And she said, I want I want your seal and your cord and your staff that is in your hand. So he gave them to her and went into her, and she conceived by him. Verse 19. Then she arose, departed, and removed her veil and put on her widow's garments back on. So she asked for these three things. First of all, his signet. Well, that was either a ring or a stamp of some sort that you would do legal documents with. It was like your ID. that you could sign papers with this. They would put it in the wax. You've seen that all through Scripture. But this signet would be his and his alone. No, it wouldn't belong to anybody else. Second of all, it says she wanted his cord. Now, this was like a necklace, like a rope that went around his neck that this ring or this signet was on. And the reason that she wanted that was so that later, if she just showed up with the signet, he could cut that cord. I lost it. This broke. I was on my way into town, and she's just found it somewhere. So no, she's thinking this. He's not even thinking, but she wanted this. And then thirdly, she wanted his staff, which indicated or signified his occupation as a shepherd. I don't know why the staff particularly, but she wanted those three things. What she really wanted was something personal, something undeniable that she could use either for blackmail or to redeem herself, depending on how Judah reacted to it. Remember, she doesn't know how he's going to react later. Well, first of all, she doesn't even know for sure that she'll get pregnant. But if she does, what if he accuses her of just stealing these things? Well, she's got all three of them, so there's no doubt there. And she's actually taking a bigger chance than might first be obvious. But at least Judah was at least a man of his word. Verses 20 through 23, when Judah sent the baby goat, by his friend the Adulamite to receive the pledge. He's going to get these things back, take the baby goat, receive the pledge from the woman's hand. He didn't find her. And so this friend asked the man of the place, said, "Where is the temple prostitute that was by the road at Enam?" But they said, "There's no temple prostitute here." So he returned to Judah and said, "I didn't find her." And furthermore, the man of the place said there were no temple prostitutes there. So then Judah said, "Well, let her keep them, and lest we become a laughing stock. After all, I sent the kid, but you didn't find her." I mean, I tried to do the right thing. I tried to do what I said I would do. So why did he send his friend rather than take it himself? Well, perhaps the more he thought about it, the more ashamed he got of what he'd done. I mean, what was I thinking? A temple prostitute of all things. But then when his friend couldn't find her, in Judah's mind, it's over. Just cut my losses, and I'll just get another one, and it's over. And then 3 months later, verse 24. Now it came about in 3 months later that Judah was informed, "Your daughter-in-law, Tamar, has played the harlot, and behold, she is with child by harlotry." And then Judah said, "Bring her out and let her be burned."
To death as punishment.
Burned, yeah. To death. Mine just says burned, but
Mine says to death as punishment.
obviously to death. By this time, Judah's forgotten all about the temple prostitute. And when he finds out that Tamar's pregnant, he hits the ceiling. He is angry. Never mind that he hadn't done what he was supposed to do by giving his third son. She had committed adultery, and yes, that deserved death according to the law of the land. And yeah, there was a double standard.
So but they said she's pregnant by immorality,
Yeah.
which I have is prostitution.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
They're saying she was a prostitute.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's where the men were fine but the women weren't.
Yeah, exactly. Now, maybe in a way Judah's relieved, because at least now his third son is safe. He doesn't have to marry her. Notice he didn't even ask who's the father. But as she was being brought out, verse 25, it was while she was being brought out that she sent to her father-in-law saying, "I am with child by the man to whom these things belong." And she said, "Please examine and see whose signet ring and cord and staff are these." Just like they took the coat to Jacob and said, "Do you think it might be Joseph?" Just look at this and see who this belongs to. And don't you know that Judah's heart sunk? Oh my. Busted. It reminded me of when Nathan went before David and told him the story, and he says, "You're the man." And not in a good way. It's you, Judah. Tamar, though, expected Judah to be fair. Judah could have just discarded those things and had her killed anyway. So I don't know who these belong to. But it was like David. It hit him. He did the right thing. Yes, Tamar was guilty. But Judah was double guilty. He was guilty by his committed sin of having sex with her. And second, by his omitted sin of not giving her his son in marriage. And he said, and Judah recognized them and said, she is more righteous than I, inasmuch as I did not give her my son Shelah, and he did not have relations with her again. One commentary said, this scene marks the beginning of Judah's transformation. Just like with David, you're the man. And he knew what he'd done, he knew it was wrong, and this was the beginning of his transformation. In verses 27 through 30, we have the birth of what turns out to be twins. Rebekah and Tamar are the only two accounts of twins at all in Scripture. And it came about at that time she was giving birth that, behold, I hadn't noticed that way. It came about at that time. No, at the time she was giving birth. And behold, there were twins in her womb. Moreover, it took place while she was giving birth. One put out a hand, and the midwife took and tied a scarlet thread. And a lot of people want to put an emphasis on the fact that it was a scarlet thread. That really does not play into the story. But tied a scarlet thread on his hand, saying this one came out first. But it came about as he drew back his hand that, behold, his brother came out. And then the midwife said, what a breach you have made for yourself. So she named him Perez. And afterward his brother came out, who had the scarlet thread on his hand, and he was named Zerah. So apparently Judah supported these sons as his own, as they're listed in every genealogy as his sons. And the genealogy specifically in Numbers 26 verse 19 lists Er and Oran as sons, but says that they died in Canaan. And then Shelah and these last two, Perez and Zerah, are listed as his sons. Perez is the actual firstborn. He is the ancestor of Boaz and of David and of Jesus. Now, many commentaries compare Judah's immorality to Joseph's staunch morality in chapter 39. That's why these two chapters are here back to back. But I think it's more to point out the spiritual growth of Judah. If you watch, as I think I said earlier, if you watch as we go on and you watch what Judah does, you can begin to see Judah's growth. This particular chapter shows in vivid detail why the Israelites had to go to Egypt. The sons were marrying Canaanite women. But like we said, who else were they going to marry? But with marrying these Canaanite women, they were beginning to take on Canaanite ways and the Canaanite culture. They had to be protected. They had to be removed from that. Likely, and this is just my opinion, I didn't see this anywhere. Likely all the sons, except maybe Benjamin, were married by the time they moved to Egypt. And of course, Joseph married while he was in Egypt. But by moving the Canaanite wives with the family to Egypt, and actually, if you read Exodus, when they lived in Egypt, they lived in a place separate from the other Egyptians. So they were kind of in a secluded area. So they were separated from everybody. And as they moved there, the Israelites were, as I've often called it, in an incubation period for 400 years until they grew from 70 people to over 1 million people. But I think, and this is just my opinion on this, I think chapter 38 was just a snapshot of the similar things in the other brothers' lives. We just have Judah's history because Judah is the line of Christ. So, questions or comments?
I have
Yeah.
a question. When I went to Matthew and I looked at, the list, and according to this Levi rate marriage rule, why wasn't the firstborn heir and then the second one Judah?
I don't know. I questioned that myself, and also I went to Ruth, and in chapter 4 at the end of Ruth, it gives the line from Perez down, and it says Boaz. This Levirate marriage, Obed, the son of Boaz and Ruth, should have belonged to whatever one of the other brothers' names was. But it says Boaz, and then Obed, and then, what's David's father's name? Jesse, and then David. So that was another question I had. So I don't know. I can't answer that one. But it could be, it should have been, but it may just have to do with the fact that, it's that line and they raised them, and so they just took on the fathership. I don't know. Bottom line is, I don't know. Anything else?
So the last pure Jews were the brothers. And then
No, they weren't. If you want to get technical about it, they weren't Jews at all. They were Israelites. There are no Jews until the southern kingdom and the line of Judah are the Jews.
Okay, so the last pure Israelites are the brothers.
I guess, yeah. If you, yeah.
And why was Judah's wife not named?
I was gonna ask that too. Why do you not know her?
Because on that, and this will just be right for UK.
Yeah. Because she doesn't make any difference.
Women aren't mentioned unless they're important, unless they play an important part in the part of the story. Incidental women. In fact, I thought she was. I thought I'd found it. When you go to First Chronicles, and you got all the genealogies, she's got a name there. But the name, I forget what it is, but it just, like a male child, Benjamin, anytime you see Ben attached to a name, it's son of. And so Benjamin is, son. But it's the equivalent word for female or daughter. So she's just
Not really
named
a name.
daughter of Shelah.
Yeah.
That's
not
all.
really a name.
Yeah, no, it wasn't really a name. It's just she's the daughter of Shelah. So not even junior, So, yeah.
But she wasn't in the line. Right?
No.
She
No.
was basically Judah's second wife,
It's Tamar. Yeah.
which wasn't really.
And I tell you something else that I just found really interesting is that when you read that, let me find Matthew. When you read that in Matthew 1 verse 1 says, the book of the genealogy of Jesus Christ. That word genealogy is Toledot. I thought, oh, how cool is that? Anything else?
Well, maybe Judah thought Tamar was jinxed, which is why he wouldn't give her his third son.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, he did. Like, what is that? What is it called? Black Widow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just,
Yeah, it's her fault he did that. It's her fault. Yeah, and yeah, she would cause him to be wicked. So yeah.
Which is also could be the reason why he didn't sleep with her. Outright.
When he was supposed to.
Yeah.
Outright.
Well,
He might have thought he got get smoked too.
I think the reason that never came up was because there was a son available, and that got him off the hook. He thought.
You know, if that son ever got married, you know.
I've never, now wait a minute. Seems like I did. Yeah, there are descendants for him in that Numbers genealogy, and also in the I won't say Corinthians, Chronicles, First Chronicles.
And part of it was just always having the thought that this story and the Rahab story, right, all those were showing that, again, it's God's sovereign use of people, including very flawed people, right, and flawed families.
Yeah.
That he uses to fulfill his plan. It's not like these people like lived good enough lives that therefore they were able to be in God's plan.
Yeah.
Well, look at David, I mean, probably
Yes.
a flawed person.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you would think that God would pick Joseph. You know, here was this pretty perfect child.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why did he not? You know, maybe because he was just too good.
Yeah. May have been. That's a really good point. And you know, and these women that wanted to be with the Abrahamic covenant, Rahab, Ruth, your God will be my God, and I will. Whoever you worship, that's who I worship. She didn't go just because she wanted to get out of Moab. And an interesting thing about that, when I was looking that up, I happened to see a note I had in my Bible, and I don't remember the chapters and verse, but somewhere in the Mosaic Law it says, remember Moab and Ammon were the incestuous sons of Lot and his daughter. Well, Moab, it said in the Deuteronomy, in the Mosaic Law, that no one from the tribe of Moab could be joined to the Israelites for 11 generations. Guess what generation Ruth is? No, can't join for 10 generations. I just gave it. Ruth was 11. I thought, oh, how cool is that? Those little things like that are just nuggets to me. I love finding out those things.
Oh, that's a diamond right there.
Yeah, for sure.
I think it's part of the reason that we can relate to the characters in the Bible is because they are flawed.
Yeah.
Because, if the Bible made all these characters to be like, perfect,
Like Joseph.
elevated, everything, it's like, who could live up to that?
Who could live up to that? Exactly.
Well, God chose Jacob from the womb.
Yeah. It wasn't that he was good or bad. He just chose him from the womb. Yeah. Don't want to go down that road too far on election. So.
Yeah, that's a slippery slope.
Yeah, we don't want to go down that road. Okay. Anything else? All right, well, let's pray. Thank you, Lord, for guiding us through this lesson, for